dear.
So there we go. We're recording, and let's share the uh, trade offers here. You and I have got in our team here. Let's uh, let's. Here's our team. Uh, Glad to see Madison. At least I don't know. I feel like he might get some run. Uh, you know, the Moster role there with Miami. Bucky, I'm loving Bucky. Glad Higgins is going to stay with Cincinnati. Cooper Cup, Seattle. That was kind of a
I,
weird.
I like I
Yeah,
like that landing position.
you like
I
it?
yeah, I he's gonna be it- it's kind of weird because he's kind of like the Tyler Lockett role
Hmm.
if you only had two really good wide receivers. And we know back in the day, Tyler Lockett was a big boom bust guy.
Hmm.
Cup is more of that steady. He should be more of that steady 4 to 6 target guy in that
Oh,
offense with Darnold. So I obviously I don't think he's going to be quite as high rated as JSN. I think JSN's clearly the number one guy, and he's an excellent playmaker. But there were worse landing positions for Cup for us as
yeah,
far as that goes. Looks like Higgins is going to stay in Cincinnati. There,
yep.
that's a good thing for us. And Devonta Smith is in a solid role there with Philadelphia. Um,
Brandon Cooks, to me, we might throw him back.
he's expendable depending on where he lands.
Yeah, yeah.
Right now we don't have any urgency to move
No, no,
anybody.
no. There's no use in
Um,
cutting anybody
and
because we got
obviously we got
Lamb,
CeeDee Lamb,
we got Waddle.
and Waddle is the guy that is the trade demand, guy right now. And I'm
So
wondering,
what the story is that uh Tyreek is not coming back. I mean, tell
no,
me the
Tyreek,
narrative.
no, Tyreek Hill is coming back to Miami after sounding like he wanted a trade. Now he's back in the fold. Miami also has that Malik Washington who looked good in part-time action last year, and they added the Hoosier hyphen, Westbrook Akine
But what
from
I'm saying is,
Tennessee.
what's the narrative on Waddle? Is
So
he going
the
to do better or just kind of go back to where it was? What do you think our trade partner is thinking?
Yeah, so here's what he's thinking, and I get what he's thinking because in 2022 and 2023,
Hmm.
Waddle was ranked as the 14th best wide receiver using MVP.
Hmm.
So he's just like that solid WR2 type guy.
Yeah.
And I last year he dropped from previous 2 years he was 92 and 88 in the
Mhm.
MVP. He dropped all the way to 35.7. So the situation is I don't think he's a 35.7 guy. He's, a young player. He's just entering his age 27 season. We know what he can do, but the question is how high do we think he's going to bounce back? And, I the Jaden Reed trade, I think Waddle's got more upside than Reed. So for
So you
me, that's an automatic decline on that one.
so you can go
Um,
ahead and reject that.
yeah, go ahead and reject that one.
Should we send him a note or just not?
Nah, just reject it because we'll make our position clear here as we go. So look at the rest of his trade offers here.
Adams and Brian
Adams.
Robinson.
So Adams is a very intriguing guy because he's going to be in a situation where he should perform well. Okay. His worst MVP
Mhm.
was WR 19. It was 19th ranked. If he gave us 19th ranked this season and next, so two more seasons is the most I'd expect out of a 33-year-old guy.
Mhm.
He played younger last year. He looked as good as ever. He was 11th best on my MVP last year. And I kind of expect him to be close to that again
So,
this year.
so it, let's so if we look at our team and we look at the wide receivers, it, it, do we have two gotta play them? It almost seems like Higgins and Smith. I'm
And
gonna
in
kind
Lamb and Lamb.
and Lamb. So let's kind of draw up our gotta play them each week. So that means Adams, Cup, uh, that's about it. So we'd be bouncing between Adams and Cup on most weeks, right? Is that
Adams, Cup, and Smith would be, maybe
Smith?
the move.
So yeah, but I was thinking
I,
Smith is probably an almost got to start each week. You think not?
he's close, and
Okay, well
you
let me
know,
put Lamb up
because
there.
he's about
So
a he's about a 15th ranked guy to
so
me.
we're thinking
So
Lamb and Higgins got to start.
yeah,
Smith, Cup, Adams are going to be our rotation then.
yeah. So we're going to have five guys that we could
Yeah,
have as solid WR2s,
yeah.
or WR. Well, Lamb's a WR1 all the way. Then Higgins, Smith, Cup, and Waddle are all solid WR2s. So we're never going to be struggling to find four guys to start every
Mhm,
week from wide receiver. I mean, that's the strength of our team.
mhm,
So and three of those guys, you know, other than Waddle,
mhm.
because Waddle's in the trade discussion, so I take him out of that discussion.
But
Lamb
Waddle
Hick,
last time, if we pull up Waddle's,
he was horrible last year.
yeah, I'm not sure previous season. I don't know what. I guess that was 2024. I guess they're showing us that. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
he
so
struggled last year.
so he had one, two, three, four double digits.
That's it. Yep,
The rest of
yeah,
the time, he
was
was
horrible.
probably hurting you or not helping.
And he was playing hurt last year. So the question is, he should have a bounce back season. Even with Tyreek Hill there, you know, when Tyreek Hill was a top three guy,
Mhm,
Waddle was hitting that 14th position in the
mhm.
rankings.
Right,
So that passing offense is probably enough to sustain two starting wide receivers in
right.
fantasy football. The question is, do we, so like the straight up trades for another wide receiver make no sense because Waddle's a solid WR2 guy. Okay.
Yeah.
So the question becomes, do we want to, what do we think of Brian Robinson?
Mhm,
Is the basic thing. Do we think Brian Robinson
mhm,
is a better starter than our current our running back situation? So our running back situation right now, we got Chuba Hubbard and we got Bucky Irving,
mhm,
and then we've got Alexander Madison. Those are our only three viable. Now we also have Audric Esteem from Denver,
mhm.
and he might end up being a starter next season. Okay, so we're not in bad shape at running back,
Mhm.
but the question is, Brooks isn't doing anything unless there's a lot of injuries. Um, our other running backs need multiple injuries before they're doing anything. So we need
Let
help at
let me pull up my metrics for running back because I do have that. So for 2024, let's see where.
and I don't have Robinson rated that high. Okay. He's a low end RB2 for me. Um,
Mhm.
he's nothing sensational. And the question is, will Washington try to replace him this year in the draft?
So
That's the unknown.
so you think that's where we're going with him?
Yeah,
Is he's going to be?
I, I don't have a confidence that he will be starting full season as the number one guy with Washington. Otherwise, I would have jumped at that trade. Even
Mhm,
though we would have been getting older at wide receiver, we've got
mhm,
wide receiver depth. And the question is, running back depth is our weakness. But here's
mhm,
the situation: we have 3 draft picks in the first 2 rounds. We
mhm,
should be able to get 2 more viable running backs out of the draft. And the third guy, who knows what position it'll be, but it really doesn't matter. We're set at wide receiver. We we're really in we have 5 guys
mhm,
that I would start as either my number one or number two wide receiver. 5 guys. That's that's an embarrassment of riches right now.
mhm,
If Waddle bounces back to what we think he should be, because
mhm.
he was for those first couple 3 years of his career, do we just write off last year as a fluke, as it was a bad year, and he bounces back to a WR2 level,
Mhm.
and that gives us, a fifth solid player. Let's say if something happens to Cup, or he's not, doing as well in that offense, or one of our other top guys gets hurt, we have an instant guy to plug and play without having to worry. So we would be all set at wide receiver, not just for this year, but for several years to come,
Mhm.
because Lamb, Higgins, Smith, and Waddle aren't going anywhere. They're going to be viable, top 3 starting wide receivers level, WR1, WR2, WR3 level.
Mhm.
Um, they're actually we have multiple WR2 guys. So
Mhm.
that's a nice problem to have when you don't have to worry about, you know, anything at the wide receiver position. So my gut tells me, because I'm worried about Brian Robinson.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's not make a final decision then. Here's my metrics tells me he's probably in what he I got him rated at 25th last year. I think he could drop to the 36th. I think he's in that RB3 range for 2025. In other words, I feel like that's kind of where he could land. But there is some real, it's not like it's guaranteed, but I don't see him having this RB1 upside. I don't think that. I think there's like a 10% chance from looking at my 2023, which is data you haven't seen. Yeah, I've got some interesting ways to look at my metrics. Uh, let's say it's around 8%, 10% chance he's he's a one, probably double that for a two, most likely a three or worse. So that's my metrics view him like that. Now, I mean, useful, streamable, but not like, wow, this is a bargain kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, and that's where I've got him as
Hmm.
well. And we're sitting in a situation where with
Hmm.
Esteem and Madison on the bench, we can cobble together a running back group again.
Hmm.
And, we're in really solid shape with this team because our only weakness is running back, and we'll address that in the draft. We've
He
got,
uh he also proposed he'll give us Brian for our 111. That
no, I
seems
wouldn't,
high.
I
Uh,
wouldn't do that.
yeah, evaluate, rejected. So we already rejected that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I like my best case for
Uh-huh.
Brian Robinson is 25th
Yeah.
best at the position. And right now we're sitting in a situation where with Hubbard
Hmm.
and Irving, he's not he's not a starter for us. He's not an automatic starter. I know that uh, Carolina added Rico Dowdle
Hmm.
as a free agent, so maybe they're planning on splitting the
Hmm.
backfield a little more. But last season Hubbard was 18th best,
Yeah.
and the year before that he was 22nd best. Both of those levels, he's like a mid to late RB2.
Hmm.
And that offense could be a little better this year.
Hmm.
So maybe he moves up a notch or two, but I don't feel like he's going to be riding the pines for Dowdle. I think Dowdle is just veteran insurance because Brooks isn't ready to play until probably week 10 next year, if then. They might sit Brooks. That was last year's rookie. They got hurt, after being hurt as a senior in his
Hmm.
last year in college. He's not likely to play this year. So Dowdle just becomes insurance behind Hubbard. I don't see Hubbard losing a ton of touches. I still think he's a viable, mid to late RB2 guy. So I don't see him better than Brian Robinson.
Hmm.
Now that might change after the draft. Let's say Carolina adds a running back in the draft again, and
Hmm.
we don't see an
Hmm.
addition. Um, you know, with Washington, all of a sudden Brian Robinson pops up a little bit more. But
Hmm.
this guy wants Waddle. I might look at his roster and see what else he has, because when somebody puts in that many
Hmm.
bids for a player, it tells you they are really hot on that player. And sometimes you can get a nice little 2-for-1 bargain that you
Hmm.
didn't expect. So we'll look at some other trade options, but for right now, I'm not going to turn down that Brian Robinson deal, but I'm not going to accept it. I'm just going to let it linger, and I might look to see what else he's got that he might deal and see if I can go up a little bit. If I get somebody who's a solid early RB2, then that would give us three viable running backs. And right now we might have four because Irving and Hubbard aren't going anywhere. But if something happens to A Shane, Jalen Wright's there as the backup, but I'm not so sure that they believed in him. Otherwise, they wouldn't grab Madison. So it's an interesting situation where I think Alexander Madison isn't dead yet. And he could be a guy that could bring us a few starting weeks next year. And then we also have a Steam who's sitting there, and we got Vaki from Detroit. If something happens to Montgomery, there's an opportunity there. So we're in a good shape where I think we're in better shape now than we were last year at running back at this time. So adding Irving was very smart. If I hadn't screwed up and let Tyrone Tracy go, we'd be really sitting in good shape.
So my metrics with Chuba in 2024, his 1 to 48 slice was 12th best.
Wow.
Yeah. And so he has about a 50-50 shot at being a low one, high two. In other words, my metrics are supportive of him being, uh, you know, being kind of where he was, or maybe even a little lower, but viable as an RB2.
Yeah,
So
my MVP.
I'm more maybe more strong on him than you are.
Yeah, my MVP had him as a 100, which typically is top 12 material.
Yeah,
So he
I
was,
got him as 12th.
yeah, he ended up being 16th ranked in MVP last year because we
Mm,
did have a pretty deep top
hmm
of that running back group.
hmm
But I'll take 100 MVP any day of the week. Like
Yeah, well, like I
that's
said, he's 12th
yeah,
on the slice list. Uh, and so there is that is encouraging for him.
yeah, and this was a situation where at the beginning of the year he wasn't the definitive starter yet. Um,
No.
they were still splitting. They were trying other things. They were waiting on Brooks, and
hmm
Hubbard just he withstood all the challenges
hmm
and did a great job. So
And
I'm
there was a lot of chaos
oh yeah
there.
yes.
I'm hoping for his sake that it settles down a little bit more, but I
Well,
don't,
at this time last year, you didn't know if Bryce Young was going to be
right.
lasting as the starter, and you know he, he had an improved season. It wasn't a great season,
Right.
but it was vastly improved versus the year before. I mean, as a rookie professor, his MVP was negative 31.
That's not good.
Last year, he was up to a 50. So let's say he has another solid improvement year. It wouldn't be shocking to see him up around an 80.
Yeah.
And if that happens, that means the offense has become better.
hmm
Thielen's back.
hmm
Um, their young wide receiving group, um, you know, Coker and Leggett actually looked pretty good at the end of the year.
hmm
So yeah, and Sanders at tight end, the rookie, he looked good. So
uh
you got some guys that should continue to improve, and that means that Hubbard might be in better shape
So,
touchdown wise.
so what do we think about this guy's round one pick for 2026 for Waddle?
That intrigues me.
Yeah, see, that intrigues
That
me
intrigues
too.
me
Yeah.
because here's the situation. If Waddle sits on our bench most of the year again,
hmm
yeah, it's great insurance, but
Yeah.
I having two first round picks next season,
That's intriguing.
it's very intriguing. And I don't know where this guy finished last year. Um,
hmm
let's take a look at that. If we can.
hmm
I don't recall where he
Schedule.
finished, but I think well, we beat him in the playoffs. He made the playoffs, so I
hmm
think it'll be a middle to late first round pick
hmm
because he has a good team. Now, here's the one thing that he already has Tyreek Hill on that team. So for him
mm
wanting Waddle is very interesting. I'm wondering if we tease out a trade. He also has Kenneth Walker from Seattle.
hmm
Um, I'm wondering if that's a guy we don't tease out and say, "Hey, look, you can have Waddle, but we want Kenneth Walker and something else.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure what that something else would be. Maybe we just make it Adams and Walker for Waddle.
Mhm.
I don't know. That 26 draft pick though intrigues me
Mhm.
because I do believe it'll be, eighth to 11th, eighth to 10th type of thing.
Mhm.
The eighth to 10th best player might not be too bad
Mhm.
next year. So that one is intriguing.
Mhm.
Um, Especially if we look at our roster and
Mhm.
we don't feel like we can, like, would we rather hang on to another player, uh, you know,
Mhm.
other than cutting them? Well, now all of a sudden you can buy yourself a year on that decision. And having two first round picks, then we could maybe even turn that around and trade for a top notch running back if we wanted. So it gives us some options.
Okay. I think we're going to let those two sit out there.
Yes, I agree with that.
Should you contact him and
Yeah,
just
I'll send
say,
him.
let you, we didn't
Yeah,
like the two, but we're considering the other two. We've got to do some other
yeah,
analysis.
yeah. We'll send him a message right
Yeah,
now.
yeah, just kind of let him know we're thinking. So that might wet his whistle to throw us some more offers.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. That's a good idea. Is to look at that
well, just
situation
tell
and
him
say,
that we're
hey, look, we're not
considering those
we're not
two. We're
done with
not
this one yet.
sure.
Yeah,
Just let him know, hey, almost like we're on the fence. Maybe you could even say we're kind of on the fence on those. We're thinking we'll get back to you, fairly soon, or just you don't have to say that, but just say we're on the fence on those two. We're still thinking, and just
yeah,
let him see if he wants to jump. Say, well, let me throw him that. Just maybe he'll make a bad move. Round one in 26 and maybe a round three this year or something.
yeah,
Push us. If he thinks we're kind of on the fence, maybe entice us a little bit. And he might not. This may be his best deal.
yeah. That's what I'll tell him. We are mulling over
Yeah.
the Waddle trade offers. We'll have an answer for you soon.
Yeah.
It's non-committal,
Yeah.
and that might get, like you say, that might also
He
bring
yeah,
another offer in.
that's what I'm saying. He might like, well, boy, if they're close, then let me sweeten up a deal.
Yeah, and I did that with a Saquon Barkley trade after his rookie season in one league where I kept saying no, and the guy kept adding stuff, and before you know it, I had like six pieces for one guy, and I
Yeah.
I couldn't resist that.
Yeah.
So you never know. You never say absolutely not to a deal. Um, but if Waddle comes back healthy, he could be one of our best four. Um,
Yeah.
I really like having that situation though where we've got Higgins, Smith, and Lamb
Mhm.
because we are solid. And then, what we don't know yet is we don't know the bye weeks yet.
Mm-mm.
So what if three of our five are on the bye on the same week?
Yeah.
All of a sudden we've got a week where we didn't expect. But you can't play worried in
No.
dynasty. You have to play from a position of strength.
Yeah.
And right now I'm feeling really good about that team. The other possible trade that I was considering
Mhm.
is he's got Drake May. So I was thinking about a Drake May, um, including Drake May in that swap.
Mhm.
and giving up Richardson and see if he's willing to take that gamble because I feel better about Drake May than I do about Richardson.
Mhm.
So, and we already know that Stroud is kind of like, oof, he could be either really good or really bad, and we're not sure. We're at the crossroads with him right now.
Yeah.
But we've got Goff, so we're sitting there in good shape, knowing we've got a good, solid starter.
Mhm.
We don't have a weakness on that team because Hawkinson will be back to his top self. If anything happens to him, we got Ertz. I mean, I'm feeling really good about the changes we made last year,
Mhm.
the guys we picked up and the guys we've kind of had on there. Um, if Denver doesn't add a running back, all of a sudden, Estime
Estimate.
is looking really good. So we could be sitting in a situation where we're in even better strength than we think right now.
Yeah. That's good. That's good, Dennis.
Yeah,
That's really
yeah,
good. I think we about beat that horse to death. I think that's good. So if you
yeah,
want to start the show.
yeah. Let's crank it up. Here we go. Sometimes good to put a meeting of the minds together on those things, though.
Yeah, well, I think we did good last year on our draft. That
Oh
that
yeah.
that I really felt like we really were able to put it together. What we needed, Dennis, and I don't know if you remember the Get Smart, they had the cone of silence. We we need to have you and I in the cone of silence. And there was a clip I just saw the other day from that they went to England and it was the umbrella of silence. And that was pretty good. So if nobody's seen Get Smart, just look up that. It was so silly.
Oh, Mel
But
Brooks was involved in that show.
yeah,
So
yeah, no, it was Buck
and
Henry. It
and
was,
Buck Henry, yeah.
yeah, those were, but it was the cone of silence.
Huh? What?
That was pretty good.
Yes, indeed. All right, here we go, Professor.
Okay.
How you doing, everybody? This is Dennis Michelson. Welcome to the science of fantasy football. Why the science of fantasy football? You get a meteorologist and a biologist together. They're going to use the scientific method. What does that mean? It means we're going to come up with ideas, test the hypothesis, let the statistics guide us to an answer, and that is going to make us better fantasy football players because fantasy football is all about statistics. And joining me as he does each and every week, he is the fantasy professor after all. He's a real professor emeritus. It's John Bush. John, the NFL free agent season is going on and on and on. And the Aaron Rodgers news reminds me of the old Saturday Night Live routine about Generalissimo Francisco Franco. Because Generalissimo Francisco Franco on Saturday Night Live was frantically hanging on to the ability to stay dead. And Aaron Rodgers is still a free agent another week later.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here, close to St. Patrick's Day. Looking forward to that. Was married 35 years ago on St. Patrick's Day. So
Wow.
yeah, so that's a tip for the you youngins. Pick a wedding anniversary that's memorable, right? So you don't forget. And Hot Springs has the shortest parade. It's a block long. And
Wow.
Valerie Bertinelli is the main celebrity that's leading the parade.
Wow.
So she'll be in Hot Springs Monday, and they'll have the block long parade. So it's quite interesting, that concept of the shortest St. Patty's Day parade downtown Hot Springs. So, it's very intriguing. Dennis, down here, it's we're in springtime down south, lots of tornadoes flying around, and kind of here today, gone tomorrow, in some of the towns and whatnot. And it's very sad, but it's kind of, I hate to joke about this, but kind of reminds me of my bankroll and horse racing. Here today, gone tomorrow. Yeah, I didn't mean to. I know people, but I had to pull that, and that's hopefully our fantasy football teams will be here throughout the season strong and bringing us some more money. But I guess the most intriguing thing, you and I, before the show started, our pre-show, we were really discussing Cup to Seattle, and we have him on one dynasty team that we share. And Dennis led the team to a second place. Woo woo. He my dynasty man, and he put some money in the pocket here in the kitty. Of course, we used it to to buy in for this year. So, Dennis, we need to hit a first place pretty soon. We need to start making a profit instead of just breaking even. So I'm hoping we're getting our mojo, and I think we should consider starting another one. I've enjoyed, especially this off season, having something to focus on, a little bit more concrete than some of these rumors and everybody's best season, worst season kind of stuff that I don't pay attention to on the Twitter.
Yeah, and I'm losing some of my dynasty teams,
You're losing
as
them?
yeah, they're people are folding up tents, it's 5 years now since COVID, and people were starting so many new dynasty leagues
Uh-huh.
because they didn't have anything else to do during COVID. I mean, my
Mhm.
job didn't change during COVID. I was still going to work every day and doing my thing, and
Mhm.
nothing changed in my life, but there were a lot of more bored people that kept inviting me to play in dynasty leagues. I was glad to take some money and have some fun, but I have about 5 or 6 of my leagues that are planning to
Shut down.
fold this year, and I'm okay with that because my strategy is always to try to win money from year one. I don't really build for the future because I don't know how long the future is going to ever be in fantasy football with leagues, because people get tired of losing and they move on, and too many people leave a league, and if you've got kind of a commissioner that's not really that great of a leader of running the league, it ends up folding. So I play for the short term in fantasy football, and even in leagues that are more robust and lasting, like FPPC. I still think you have to have a mindset of only 2, 3 years. You know, we when you brought me in to help you manage this team,
To manage, not to help me, to
well, to
manage.
help manage, we discuss all the different
Yeah,
deals
but
and we
but
discuss the lineups and everything. Yes, you let me have the final say, but we do discuss it as a team, because as a team, I think we're stronger than
but
either
but
of
you're
us
teaching
individually.
me, and I don't stop you when you do that, but I'm still learning, and uh, you're more optimistic than I am, but you do have realism to your optimism,
Yeah.
and I didn't put all that together, and I see that now that I didn't think of it like that. I just uh, never had that. Nobody ever mentored me, and I think you just are a natural. And just realize not everybody's good. At the racetrack, I knew some people, that if there was young horses, I'd want to talk to them. Some of the, they just excelled in young horses. Other people, were good long shot players. Other people were only bet when the favorite was, can't lose. And, I think you just have a natural dynasty mentality. I think you're able to juggle it all together. And I'm learning that. But like I said, I started in redraft, so I never had any dynasty experience except for this team, and I, I I didn't. It wasn't handled correctly. I was mid pack for years, and now we've moved up the last 2 years. So really good, Dennis. You got a natural. You're a talent for that. I think your quarterback and your running back, which I think your metrics are strong and stronger than the average bear out there. I think part of it is you're strong in those positions. And
Yeah.
I really enjoy how you juggle those two positions in our team.
See, I'm a big believer when you're drafting for a dynasty team that you're focusing on the upside of players.
Yes.
Rosters are a little larger. Um, you know, you can hold on to a guy if he has one bad year. It's not as big of a deal as it is in redraft. Redraft, you need to have guys that are right there. You cannot be messing around. But in the dynasty view of fantasy football, yes, you want to be good today. You want to win every year. I don't trade away guys with this idea that I'm going to be better in 3 seasons, because that's 3 more seasons of paying the dues. I want to, always be in that top three and fighting for the top three. Will you always make it? No. But if you make it to the playoffs every year, you got a chance of winning money. And when it comes to running backs, I'm a big believer in looking at the upside. Where's the upside with this guy? What could happen? And that's, last year he measured bad at the combine, and a lot of these, you've heard of the term RAS scores, RAS scores. That is a measurement of all their 40 times and their size and how much, how well they did the high jump and all this stuff goes into this metric. And it is an important metric. But sometimes what's more important is how does he play football? Bucky Irving did not measure well at either the combine or his pro days. If you look at his metrics, they were not strong. But all that means is you don't take him in the first round. It's you don't ignore the player. So when he fell to us in the second round last year, it was a no-brainer pick. Like I was high enough on him that I did take him end of the first round in some leagues. And we had the ability to grab him and make him our guy. And
But you use your opportunity
yes,
detector. I don't know what
yes.
you call it. I don't have as much time to focus on that, and I really appreciate you bringing that. I'm looking forward to who we're going to think about this year. I don't know when that article hits. Maybe probably after the draft, how to see the landing
Well,
positions.
I'm gonna have an opportunity article coming out before the draft.
Okay, okay.
Next week, I'll pretty much teams are settled in now.
Mhm.
There's some guys that will move. I mean, look at the wide receiver situation. Diggs and Keenan Allen are still available. Those are guys that are going to have the potential to be a WR2 in fantasy football again next
Yes.
year. I know they're getting older, but they should be solid WR2s next year, depending on where they land. So those guys matter, but a lot of them, most
And
of the
I will
guys have,
say about age, and they can look at my videos, but folks, there, what comes across to me is people kind of, oh, they're old, they're getting bad. What happens is those that can't make it are gone. So
Yes.
the survivors, I think, are maybe better than the public thinks. Notice I said the
Yes.
public. No, I didn't
Yes.
say everybody. And I think Dennis, we know that. So
Yes.
age doesn't concern me because if they can't handle it, teams just won't take them. And so the survivors can do a lot more than you think. And I think there's some bargains there. And I think Diggs, especially, I predict Keenan Allen will be thought of as a 3-4, and he on some weeks could, as you say, could be a 2. So a very streamable piece under the right conditions, he can deliver, some nice points this year if he finds the right. There's a lot of moving factors, but I think Diggs is going to be thought of higher than Allen. But I think surprised last year in Chicago. He really brought in a couple good weeks that helped me on some of my teams.
Yeah, and both of those players, I mean, Allen's entering his age 33 season, Diggs entering his age 32 season. Neither one of those guys made their careers by being speedsters.
No.
They're possession receivers.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the kinds of guys that, in the right circumstances will really pay off. And you even have Tyler Lockett sitting there that, depending on where he ends up, let's say he ends up in a good situation here, where
I
he
think for
enters
best ball, I would
best
consider
ball.
him,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
uh, down the road is, give you 2, 3 weeks of really, potentially a 2 touchdown week. 3 weeks, 2 weeks, that still helps you out in best ball.
Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about here is mainly, Lockett's always been one of my best ball guys,
Yeah.
where I have him on more rosters in best ball than I do in redraft because you're
Yes.
you're just looking at what's the upside weeks, what's the upside weeks. But Professor, I think that same best ball mentality ends up working good for a dynasty player because
I've
it,
never
it
heard anybody say that though,
yeah, I,
Dennis.
I really think it does because I'm looking at upside. Okay. I'm looking at what can this guy do on his best weeks. And if I then can figure out what his best weeks are, I've got a viable option to rotate into my lineup.
I think your pattern and your predictability skills give you a view of the floor ceiling on these players. So maybe that's
Yes.
what we're really talking is being able to juggle that prediction of a floor ceiling, and you kind of see that range of outcomes. It's kind of, and you can put that together with value, right, with the ADP. And I think Keenan Allen, Lockett, is going to be. I think these have value depending on, like, say, if they have a position and the price. And it all comes, in some ways, it all comes to the odds, right? The horse races, it's the price. Good horses and good odds are good bets. Always will be. But, a good horse at bad odds is not a good bet,
No.
and that's where you try, exotics and other ways. And I mean, there's a lot of, if you get into horse racing, people try to say, look, we all know this is good. How can I add to my take home? That if they have a good day, and a lot of people do pick threes or they'll do exactas or I love superfectas with good horses, maybe won't, put them in a second or third position and they'll pay more than they should. So I think the dynasty mentality is really that floor ceiling concept that I think you can
Yes.
envision that.
Yeah, and I really do. That's the way I think in
Mhm.
Dynasty is I look at that upside potential and you know, I think that looking at a team view, like you've taught me.
Mm-hmm.
Not just don't look at just the player, look at the team
Yes.
basis. And that will quite often key you in to some guys that have that breakout potential and, or don't have the breakout potential. I mean, I'm looking at the whole freelance or the whole free agency landscape, and most of the teams I can look at, and even if, on paper, they got they have less talent or appear to have less talent, I can at least see why they made the move they did and can understand it. The one I can't understand right now,
Mm-hmm.
the Dallas Cowboys.
What do you
So the
think about that?
Dallas Cowboys, so Rico Dowdle last year,
Yeah.
he wasn't great, but he wasn't awful. Okay. And they let him go free agent, which I don't think was a bad move. But the two free agents that they brought back in to replace him, Javonte Williams, it couldn't hold the job in Denver versus an undrafted free agent in Jaleel McLaughlin. He was just losing touches to guys that nobody thought that highly of. And, then you've got Miles Sanders, who at one point was a solid player, but boy, that's years ago. And I don't understand that. That's your starting running back group next year is Miles Sanders and Javonte Williams, two guys that in the last 3 years haven't come close to being better than a 60 on the MVP index. This is the Dallas Cowboys. Like, you would think they would be in contention for a really solid running back or at least draft one early to replace what they got. And that's not saying they can't go and take one in the draft also, because both of those deals with Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders, they were kind of one and done type of deals. It won't kill you on the dead cap space for year two. So if they don't do anything, they're expendable. But I think I would have paid my money for somebody else or paid less money to bring in other guys. I looked at that move, Professor, and then they couldn't add Cooper Kupp because they didn't want to give him the money that he was asking. And, Kupp's up there in years, and maybe you don't want to give him, 15 mil a year. I can understand that, but then add something else. Right now, they've got the only guy that they brought back was Turpin. Like, I can't figure the Cowboys out right now because you've got an aging quarterback in Dak Prescott. He's not going anywhere. He's on your roster for the next several years now. His next contract isn't like they don't have an easy out with him until 27 or 28 season. So you're stuck with an aging quarterback. He'll be age 32 year this season. You would think you would build around him. You would think you would bring in a better second wide receiver to go with CeeDee Lamb. But they didn't. They're just a team they just have the word average looking them stare in the face. Like 9-10 win season, that's the best they're going to do. Unless they bring in more talent in the draft at running back and wide receiver. But right now, where they're drafting and the other holes they have on defense, that's not looking very viable. I don't understand the logic of what Dallas is trying to do in free agency, but maybe that's what happens when you let the owner and his son be the only guys making decisions. I think most teams have a general manager for a good reason, Professor. And when Dallas doesn't, and they're showing this kind of result, I'd be pretty ticked off if I was a Dallas Cowboys fan, because I think the other teams in their division, even the Giants, are looking better. So I don't understand the logic right now. Even the Giants without a quarterback are looking almost as good as the Cowboys. So it's just a weird situation right now that the Cowboys are in that area of Dak's contract where you got 3 more years with him.
Well, another way to look at that is that sure makes the Ferguson Lamb shares look good because they're going to be passing,
Yes.
passing, passing. Right? Is that
Especially
is that
Lamb. Yeah.
yeah, is that a way to look at it too? Is just okay, flip it.
It,
Regardless of what Dallas is thinking, it's not going to work. The running backs are going to be eh. So what are they going to do to have to win? Pass.
but here's the problem on that flip side.
Mhm.
They're going to have to pass, okay,
Mhm.
which makes Dak an interesting guy to grab as a
Uh,
value quarterback.
as a good two, he could be a late one, early two type.
But right now, they don't have anybody outside of Lamb. Lamb's my number 2 wide receiver right now, ranked number 2. I only have the Sun God ahead of him. Okay, that's a pretty nice neighborhood to be in.
Yeah.
But the problem is the Sun God has a guy behind him who's like a top 40 wide receiver as their second banana.
Mhm.
Tolbert and Turpin were rated outside the top 60.
Yeah, they're it's lean.
So if
Something
I'm,
happens for injury, it's lean.
well, even though, or this, if I'm going up against the Cowboys, who am I going to stop? Who am I going to double team? Who am I
You,
going to take out of the game? CeeDee Lamb?
yeah, you will Belichick against Lamb. Yes, you
Yeah,
will.
because they don't have a running game that can beat you. They don't have a second receiver that can beat you. Even their tight end is good, but not great. Like Ferguson is about a 15th to 20th ranked on the low side, 10th to 12th on the high side. That's not that's not great. Like if you're going to have only one,
He's not a Kelsey.
he's not a Kelsey, he's not a Brock Bowers, he's not
No,
a Trey McBride.
no.
If you only have one premier wide receiver,
Yeah,
you have to have a premier tight end, not an adequate tight end.
right.
And I just look at that situation. I'm going, man, that's an easy team to go up against. I take Lamb out of the game, and I'm in good shape.
Yeah.
I put a man on Lamb and a safety rotating over. Put a body on him every time he
Mhm.
tries to get. He'll beat you 5 or 6 times a game, even double teamed. But he's not going to beat you 10 or 12 times a game, double teamed.
Right.
They need more talent in Dallas, and they did nothing to add it. I don't understand the logic behind that, and I'm just I have a mystery thing going on when it comes to them. And the other team is Buffalo, because Buffalo didn't sign James Cook yet they brought in Joshua Palmer as the answer at wide receiver. Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, Keon Coleman. They're 3 guys that are perfect to fit in that WR2 or WR3 role on a team. So they got 3 guys that can fit those other 2 positions. They did not have an alpha wide receiver, and they bring in Joshua Palmer, who's another WR3 kind of guy. I don't understand their logic either, because they haven't signed James Cook. That should have been your priority. I've got a few dynasty teams with Ray Davis on them, and I'm sitting there drooling, going, "Good, let Cook go."
Yeah.
Ray Davis will be the only viable starter. But But I just, again, don't understand the logic. On the defensive side of the ball, and I know we're talking fantasy football, but I'm talking real football now for a moment. On the defensive side of the ball, two of the guys that they brought in as free agents are going to miss a combined 4 to 8 games because of suspension to start the year. There's teams and what they're doing in free agency that just doesn't make any sense to me at all. And then I look at other teams and I'm like, man, they're doing great.
Allen, how many years is he going to be able to be a running quarterback? And in other words, if Buffalo's thinking we can live with the two WR2 3s because we got Allen and he'll play Superman for us, that trick only lasts so long for a quarterback until something happens or just age catches up with him and he needs to say a pocket. In other words, I can see Buffalo, Allen, Dennis, having a little bit of trouble that year or two when they realize Allen can't do it all and he has to be more of a pocket kind of guy. Kind of like Mahomes is still, he's not being forced to run, but he can still. Allen, it almost seems like that's part of the plan. Like we're going to run him X times each game, and that trick's going to get old for Buffalo. And I think I start to get stale in my head this year and further on. So I think that's going to catch up with it. I don't know when, but I just don't know. Is he able to keep that going?
Entering his age 29 season already.
Better
That's
keep
shocking.
that's still having him as design runs. I do, yeah. When he gets hit in the head in the cold, frozen ground, I think it's a lot riding on him.
Yes,
You know,
I
I
don't
just
like
don't
their
seem that's a viable, concept to go in for next year with
oh
Allen.
no. No.
There's a lot of potential downside to that.
But
Who's his backup, by the way? Maybe
uh
that's for best ball. Maybe I need to.
yeah, right now, I don't even know if they've got a second
So they've
like
put all their
legit
eggs.
starter.
If they do get
Um
somebody that's viable, that might be an interesting play in Superflex or Superflex best
ah
ball.
how could I forget who they've got sitting on the bench? It's Mitch Trubisky's
There
back
you
again.
go. There it is, Dennis.
Trubisky might be that late round best ball
There's that
guy.
last guy
Yeah.
off, especially in their super flex best ball, he'll go sooner. But even in redraft, I like to have potentially up to three. I could see him being a dice roll. Yep.
Yeah, this is how I look at free agency. It's not just the composition of the skill positions.
Mhm.
It's the offense as a whole. Okay. Look at Cincinnati is a classic example. So their defense was awful last year, which is why Burrow was so great. He had to be
Yeah,
great.
he had to be
He
spry and throw.
he had to score 35 or more to win games. Their defense didn't get any better in free agency. And in fact, it looks like they're going to sign both Chase and Higgins to big money. These guys combined are going to be almost 65 to 70 million dollars of a cap hit for them. You add Burrow's contract into that, and all of a sudden you're putting all the money on the offense. And that's great. That's great for fantasy football. It's not great for real football. I don't see Cincinnati's defense getting that much better through the draft and through minor additions that they're making. I'm still looking at Burrow as he's going to be a guy that I'm really looking at this year in as my number one quarterback because in redraft, especially in one quarterback redraft, Burrow might be my guy because he's going to have to put up another big season if you want that team to have any chance of winning games. And he's been, a solid 100 to 120 plus MVP guy in actually, he's been a solid 120 to 130 MVP guy every year he's been healthy in the league. That's the kind of guy without running a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of guy that I want as my RB1. And he's got two fabulous wide receivers. I'm looking at that situation and start thinking that's a guy that I'll probably be building around in a lot of redraft leagues, especially if he continues to be about the fourth or fifth quarterback off the board. That's even better. But that's kind of where I'm looking at, or how I'm looking at this free agency season. Uh, One team that got really better
Mm-hmm.
through the draft and trades, the Bears. They changed out four of their five offensive linemen, like all improvements. So Caleb Williams looks better. Whoever they bring in at running back to go with
And they're
DeAndre Swift,
losing Keenan Allen for sure, huh?
losing Keenan Allen, but they added Olamide Zacchaeus from Washington.
He flashed last year.
He flashed at the end of the season, so he gives them a viable WR3 to
Mm-hmm.
go with DJ Moore and Odunze. Then you got a guy in Ben Johnson, their new coach, who knows how to use a tight end. Maybe Cole Kmet looks better.
Mm-hmm.
He's still going to be a streaky guy, a
Yes,
big, big boom bust guy. But again, that's a guy you love in best ball.
yeah, as
And
a two.
as a two. So
Yeah.
I'm looking at this situation in Chicago and I'm thinking, boy, Caleb Williams should be much better this year. He's going to have time. Now we get to see if he's any good.
Yeah.
He was running for his life last year and he still finished as QB 22 at MVP. That's not bad for a rookie. But I would expect better from him with a better coach and a better offensive line. But that's how I look at the free agency and the trade season. Before we get to the draft, I'm looking at who got better, who got worse,
Mm-hmm.
who made moves that made sense to me, especially in a fantasy football sense, like Seattle, Cooper Kupp as the second banana at wide receiver out there. That's a guy that all of a sudden I'm moving up. I like that combination of Najigba and Kupp. That gives you two really good wide receivers. Maybe neither one's a top 10 guy,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe both are in that 15th to 25th range. And Kupp his ADP seems to be a little lower than that right now. So that might be a viable option. It's just going to be very interesting to see how the rest of this off season shapes up once we get to the draft. But you got to look at the data in smart ways. You got to look at the data in several ways. And Professor, you have found a different way to play with the data that I think is going to really be a game changer for a lot of folks here going forward.
I'm thinking so. I'm sharing the data and up to 185 slides now. So I haven't done wide receivers, but I've about finished the quarterbacks. I'm debating how I should approach this. I'm almost thinking I should start at the end. That just happened Friday. Just gave me a way to look at all this. So I think maybe that's what I'll do. But folks, I got a lot of data that I can talk about. But this, I'm going to show it to you, and you're going to be like, what? What is all this? A lot of colors here. And so what I did, Dennis, I started thinking about what we had in 2023. In other words, I just thought about the Bush figure, as you dubbed it, and I had one way to look at it. I looked at the total weekly ranking of a player uh, versus everybody in the league, kickers, wide receivers, quarterbacks, in the top 48 weekly. And I called it the 1 to 48 slice. And I wanted to use that as one of our metrics to add in. So in 2023, and I'm pointing over here to the this side, the right side over here, if you look at the figures. In green are the top 12 in 2023. The orange is the next 12, so the twos, and then the threes are in yellow. And then the end of 2024, so the actual real data, and these numbers are fantasy points per game. And green are the ones that were top 12, orange next 12, yellow next. And if there's nothing, that means they were out of the top 36.
Wow.
So uh, we can look at the 1 to 48 slice and we can see green to green means uh, top 12, and they ended up top 12. We had some failures. Chubb, Moster, and ETN were failures
Wow.
for that, but we hit 2, 3, 4. So I hit six. I hit 6 out of 12. So 50% chance. What was interesting, well, I'll tell you what, so I'll stop there. So along the way, I started thinking about the downside. In other words, we had the top 48. What about players that had the crap weeks, like 156 or worse? What was that balance? And I used, and I think I showed this equation. Let me go up to right here. So if you look at principal component analysis, don't worry about all this. Just you see the red line? That is the worst of the week. Red means it is a completely inverse negative to the whole pie. So if you're making pie, that's like if you put too much of this, that's putting salt in your pie, Dennis, and
Yeah.
it's not good.
Yeah.
So every player, there is input, and you can see the goodness top 48, 49 to 96. So you're in the top 100 each week. That's good. And that's deep, deep green. That adds 97 to 145th weekly. It's starting to get almost break even. But if you have a lot of this, so players then have a balance, Dennis. Players will have some of these weeks, but some of those weeks. And your metrics have been, it's where I thought about this and thinking the floor ceiling concept. I think you've been juggling without metrics. I think you just, is it going to rain 10 inches or none kind of thing. And so principal component analysis allows you to take the slices and add a multiplier to it. And I was able to make an equation. And so the top 48 is you multiply by 0.5. The bottom is you multiply by a minus 0.46. So almost the same. Good and bad. So if you have an equal split, it's kind of eh. But if you have a lot of this and not a lot of that, that's good, right? Or if you have a lot of that, that's bad. If you don't, so you have a balance. So there's this balance concept I started thinking about. So I then rated players in 2023 based on their what I call Bush figure linear regression using the principal component equation. So the top 12, green to green, orange to orange, and yellow. So take a look at the green,
Wow.
Dennis. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Better
And,
than the
and
slice.
a
And only
ninth
one
real
failure.
close. Yeah.
One failure.
That's crazy.
But take and so I'm going to jump to look at my second level of that. A lot of outs, but look over here at the slice. It
Hmm.
catches a lot of them. So I think what this is saying to me is if let's just assume every year is just like this says, oh, you really look at the top 12, but you then add the second 12 of the slice to catch some you might have missed over here. In other words, a combination metric. And you and I did that. We took five, or was it six? I forgot, metrics,
Six altogether. Yeah.
fused them together and balanced it out. So if I fuse these together, you see I'm starting to catch almost all of them between the top 12 here and, the 24 here. You're not letting a lot of fish slide. And so that was surprising. I would not have predicted that uh, this was catching what I didn't catch up here. And I really was proud that the top 12 were catching almost all the fish here, Dennis. So that was very intriguing. So it's almost saying I need to figure out a way to fuse this, as you know. So that means I got to go back and try to figure out how to catch this and this together to make a grand net that catches everybody. I missed Chuba Hubbard over here. This missed Jacobs and Henry over there. So, the slice caught Henry, and I didn't catch it there. Isn't it? So that's really interesting. The second best was caught here, wasn't caught over with this metric. So people, you regardless of what you see on Twitter, people say, "Oh, I've got this, I've got that." If they don't look at it like this, different ways, I think they're missing, Dennis. In other words, they could have this, but boy, it really sucks here. And if you don't know that, then you're going in claiming, these are your next, and it's taken away the goodness here because you're missing here. So I think having a view, and I would love to see your MVP done like this. You see what I'm saying? Look at it just very simple. The colors jump out at you, and you can see these grand landscape patterns, Dennis. And I was curious to, when we finally put them all together, we need to look at 2023 and look at our fusion versus the independent parts and who was best at trying to catch all the fish. I'm greedy. I want to catch all the top 12 with my top 12, right? I don't want to lose, if I'm fishing, Dennis, I don't want a bait lost off the hook, right? You put a worm on there, and sometimes the fish are too small and they'll take the worm and won't get hooked. That's bad. Bait stealers, we call that down here. You
Oh
don't
yeah.
want any of those, right? If I put a line in the water, I want to get a fish. And so, I'm greedy. I want 12 out of 12. So, this is where I came Friday. I would not have predicted this distribution at all. I was really surprised how good this was, and I was kind of surprised how the second shift was as good as the first. In other words, it looks like you got to use the top 24 to catch almost all the fish. Here, I can use the top 12 to catch most of them. So, really interesting. I think they're saying something. I think it says something about the balance here to catch. But I think if you're able to get in the top 48 weekly slice enough to at least get in the top 24, that's telling you something too. You
And that,
shouldn't ignore that. So I'm going to let you talk now. Here's the
yeah.
pattern.
Oh, this is exactly how we drafted last year, Professor. So without knowing this is how we drafted because remember when we put our six metrics together,
Yes.
very picky
Yes.
early in the draft.
Yes.
First three rounds, first round we wanted 6 for 6.
Yes.
Second round, we preferred 6 for 6, but would take 5 of 6.
Yes.
Round 3, we took 5 of 6. The farther we went in the draft, the more we are looking at the positive aspects of the player, not their potential bad weeks.
Right.
We are looking at upside potential. That's what this is doing, because what this is saying is, okay, early on at running back, I want guys to tick all the boxes. And here's the intriguing thing for me. On your equation that you showed me, remember, I told you, I'm not sure if MVP is doing it the right way, but this is how I'm doing it. What your equation told me is that counting the really good weeks and the really bad weeks at the same amount of points, just in the opposite direction,
yes,
is right on the money. That's the way to do it. And I'm counting those sort of median and above weeks as being 1 point. And what your metrics told me is that maybe I want to even consider the extremes at a higher value. So in other words, instead of counting 1 point for a really good week and -1 for a really bad week, maybe I need to toy with the idea of 1.5 points for a really good week and -1.5 for a real bad week, and see how that goes. That's going to be interesting. I'm going to do the math on that here in the next week.
And so that's, Dennis, I just do want to break here. Folks, what Dennis is saying is he is modifying based on what I'm finding. And that's why I think when you find similar data people together, that's how you build on each other. And over and over, it's just amazing how that collaboration between us really just is more than I can do to singly. That we are a power. It's the power twins activate, Dennis. And I really like that. And it really feels good. And by the way, always looking for a third, but a good third. We want somebody who comes in and adds the third wave to this and can balance. Imagine, pretty good now. Can you imagine if we had somebody with expertise? And regardless of if the few of you are listening, if you have that, you're probably leaving something on the table. I think poker players, they probably watch other poker players to try to get better. I mean, that's how you learn. And I think everybody has this intuitiveness like, I'm not the total package. And in science and in weather forecasting, it's not one person. Dennis, 100, 200 years ago, somebody in their basement doing something, that was about all you could do. I think the Wright brothers, two of them together, started that. And Thomas Edison had a whole warehouse full of people. I think that concept of having experts coming together, talking and sharing, that's the strength of the science of fantasy football. That's what we do.
Yeah, and this is the scientific method at work, okay? Because here's my biggest frustration with science today that I see is this is the kind of research on fantasy football that isn't tainted by any funding. We're looking at the data for data's sake. And when you do that in science, you end up with a purity that is it's amazing. And when you're talking about science and you're trying to appease who is providing you the funding for that grant and the research, it takes a lot of guts to say, you know what, my thank you for funding this research, but we're proving what you didn't want us to prove. Are you okay with that? And that's the thing in science is science, the scientific method, when applied correctly, it doesn't have any favoritism to ideas. It detects which ideas are the good ideas. And here we're seeing it in action with the Bush number, where the linear regression version is much stronger at identifying who are the great players are going to be the following year. The only miss was Raheem Mostert, who got hurt and replaced.
And if you're saying, well, who's the top 12? Kamara, Williams, Montgomery, and I forgot who Michael Carter is. He must not have played a lot of games.
Backup.
He must have not played a lot of games.
No,
but apparently when he played, Dennis, he was damn good the one or two times he played. Gibbs, Bijan, Dobbins must not played a lot, but when he did, he delivered.
He was solid.
Jacobs, Henry, Najee Harris, people, he's not done. So those are what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I don't know Tony Jones. He must have been another backup.
He was a backup with New Orleans part-time.
Apparently when he hit well.
Yeah, one or two games. And that's the problem here is, if we
I'm not trying to throw anybody in or out. Just here's the data. And then Barkley's the top 12. So my data says 8 of these guys are probably going to be in the top 12 again, some way, somehow.
Yeah. Yes. And I would say if you eliminate the guys that didn't play more than 6 full games, you're then in a situation where I know these guys are going to be good next year. And when I say I know they're going to be good next year, it doesn't mean, look at where the top 12 from the previous year.
Mm-hmm.
Look where they all finished the following year.
Here it is.
Even if they didn't hit at the highest level, they still made the chart. The worst case was still a top 36.
Yeah, so 8 out of 12 were 12 to top 12.
Yeah.
Then the other 4, one was out and 2 were in the second, and McCaffrey was in the third level.
Yeah.
So
that's and McCaffrey was all injury.
Yeah.
So that was
easy.
I
think you look here, and then to make sure you've covered the base, you would look in the next 12 here.
Yeah.
And see, or, and I hadn't even done this, folks, I did this Friday, look, in other words, who's top 12 in both? Is that a for sure deal kind of thing?
Yes.
And I haven't even done any of that. So Dennis, I would love to do this for all our metric. Again, folks, I'm also going to do counts over median data. I'm going to come back in and try to re-up that and try to expand it. And by the way, Dennis, folks about science, when I did some of this, I didn't do this for the quarterbacks and the tight ends, Dennis. So now I got to go back, even though I thought I was done, because I start getting in and thinking about things, and then I end up having to go back and add. So I've got to go back and do the quarterbacks and the tight ends, to see, is there anything that can help us?
So stay on this graphic, and I'll point out another cool thing I'm noticing in the pattern. So in 2023, J.K. Dobbins only played a handful of games. Okay, so if you eliminate him, that gets you down to James Cook. So if you look at the top 12 that had full seasons and you compare them to 2024, you hit on even one more and you had one less miss, with J.K. Dobbins. Now, but here's the thing. Even though J.K. Dobbins was a partial season, he still had a strong year the next year. And remember, we were all over him last year because of opportunity. So here's a situation where you're reading the data, but then you're applying it and making it even stronger. Because if we go ahead and make that sort for games played and say, hey, J.K. Dobbins he didn't hit the minimum. So James Cook is in our group of 12.
Mm-hmm.
Now we got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 out of 12 that hit the next year. That's incredible.
That is.
It's incredible. And the other 3 that didn't, Chuba Hubbard went from being a timeshare to being the primary back. And guess what? We were able to spot that, correct?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Josh Jacobs went from a bad offense to a really good offense. We spotted that too, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. We grabbed him.
And
of course,
hey,
Henry. Yeah.
Derrick Henry, we caught him too. So the ones that were not automatic plays because they weren't in the top 12, we still were able to diagnose those. And we're even able to diagnose guys that were going to be pretty darn good the next year. We liked Aaron Jones, like Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker making that second tier. Again, these aren't your top 12 guys, but they weren't drafted as top 12 guys either. So we see some really good value here in this second and third group that are great viable players at cost. And if you look at our logic from last year and apply it using this data as a guide, but then using the logic of opportunity, the hits keep a coming. And that is really intriguing when you look at the data in reference to, okay, here's a guy that didn't quite make this list, but why are we forecasting him to be high? Well, we've got good reason to forecast him high. That's going to make this data even more powerful, because if you make the top 36, what this is telling me is if you make the top 36 the year before, I'm taking a hard look at you at being top 12 next season. The better you are, the higher you are up in there. If you're top 12, I'm really looking at you, because that was almost 70%, almost 80% of the field. Mm-hmm. So I kind of like the way you look at this data. It's like having that buyer's number that you look at, and it doesn't mean, in horse racing, doesn't mean 109 is better than 107 when it comes to betting, but 109, 107, and 72, I know which 2 horses I'm looking at. And that's what the Bush number is doing for you.
Now I have to go back to 2022, 21. I'm going to go a few years back and come back. So maybe next week we'll have 2022 to 2023, just kind of start getting a big sense. But, Dennis, as far as I'm seeing, have you ever seen any experts on show you this? This is what we thought last year. This is what it ended up. Here's points per game, and here it is. I hadn't seen it. People talk, but this is the data, for good or for bad. This is what it is.
And this is where you want to be. You want to be on the weekly value guys who are hitting a high percentage of the time. This data is going to make you a winner more than points per game or total points. It's because this is how the points are scored every week. And if your guys are making these lists, I've got a winning team here based on building around these guys.
And I'm curious about tight ends. so hard to get consistency every year to year.
Yes.
I'm just curious, will we find something that will help us out? I don't know. Like I said, I did this and I started thinking. And then to me, if you went back and looked at ADP with all this and start seeing, the draft capital that you were spending for the top 12, the Bush figure LRs, where were the bargains and whatnot, that kind of thing. So that's to be done as well. This has taken me a lot more time than I envisioned. Folks, this is going down the rabbit hole here. But again, I've got to be thorough. I can't let it slide. I cannot, I got to check it out. I got to see what's under that rock. I just can't walk away. And so, that's what I'm chasing right now, Dennis. And it, I just got to go back and figure it all out. And I've done a bunch of other stuff as well, but I thought this is kind of the end. This is the end of the where we're going, is having simple list to use for our drafting. So I'm looking
And I,
forward to this.
yeah, and I would like to see how many guys do we lose every year to rookies making those groups. So how many rookies make the top 12 the next year? What is our rate of turnover in the NFL? We can track that using this data as well. And that's important stuff to know.
Yeah, it is. And what I will say, and let me stop. Let's see, let me stop here. Let me go to my spreadsheet. Let's see, where's my spreadsheet? Is this it? Yeah, this is the spreadsheet. So this is the actual data here. And the Bush LR, I'm Chase Brown, these are the ones I missed. Of the top 36, these are the ones I missed. And the number is the end of the season ranking points per game. So the worst I did was I missed Chase Brown at number 15. Bucky Irwin I missed. So you're asking about rookies. That this is who I missed.
And those two guys at the top of the list are two guys that we were all over.
Yeah.
So
And then
we
yeah.
identified those two as being two that we really thought
And so over
highly on.
here, Dennis, are the ones that the slice missed. And it's
Interesting.
almost the same people,
Yes.
In other words, either system would have missed Chase Brown.
And the fact that we picked up on him, like
Yes.
our two guys that we were higher on than consensus last year were Chase Brown and Bucky Irving.
Yeah.
And we hit on both of them. And that's great. We're going to miss on some as well. But when you can hit on two guys like that, that's saying something. And that was all off of opportunity. We also
So
were all over J.K. Dobbins. So we
the,
hit
the
on
total
three
miss
guys.
was 11 out of 36.
That's not too bad because you can rationalize why some of those guys made the list the next year.
Yeah. So future work, Dennis, is trying to figure out, how we missed on these.
Well,
Is your
yeah,
opportunity, does your
yes,
opportunity go beyond the metrics, right? What could be kind of,
yes, yeah, and the top three are the guys that you're going to want to hit on every year. You don't really care about hitting on the guys from 25th to 32nd as much as you do the guys that are going to be in that top 20.
yeah.
So if you can nail them and look, we weren't perfect last year by any stretch of the imagination, but Chase Brown, J.K. Dobbins, and Bucky Irving were three guys that we were higher on because they didn't have anybody else competing for that position. Now, Bucky did because Rashid White wasn't awful the year before. Okay. But we still liked that opportunity of him having a shot at making that list. So here's Rashad White, in the middle of that second group. So
Yeah.
we knew where the vulnerabilities were with him, and he wasn't awful either. So again, how many teams did we draft in both redraft and best ball where we had Rashad White and we had Bucky Irving on the same team? At cost, it was really easy to do.
Mhm.
And then we're in a situation where we couldn't lose. One of them was going to emerge. And in fact, the play them both strategy wouldn't have killed us
Mhm.
last year with those two guys. So that's what's intriguing about this data, Professor, is the data is confirming who the top guys should be, but we're in a situation where we were looking at Bucky Irving and Rashad White of being 13th and 22nd, respectively. I can live with the 22nd guy as my RB2.
And I just want to stop, Dennis. You see, being a predictor that you are, you have such a grasp of the patterns, and it's really refreshing because sometimes I get a little bit stuck on the data. And it's nice when we talk through in the cone of silence, you and I talking and that we're able to pull that out. And I think a good metric that we used when we fused everything, as you said, we had to have all six metrics telling us something, then five, then four. That's a shortcut in a compressed time. That's why I like slow drafts because I
Oh,
have more
yeah.
time
Yep.
to think about this. And I never see people really talking about that on Twitter as well. I think people get into uh, these quick drafts, and I'm wondering, maybe they just are better at slow. How do they know they're not better at slow drafts? Have they done it? I know I'm damn good. I make money at slow drafts.
Yes.
And I've got my diary says that, so that's what I follow. And I wonder, do people take time to handicap themselves? And we probably do need some. I mean, I've touched on that in some of my video lessons on the psychology side of things and whatnot. The reason I think Dennis is not doing it because it's like you've been doing this so long,
Yeah.
you've just, it's like the knife, it gets a little dull, but it never won't cut. And you've just, I like having that skill. And it's hard to define the skill. I'm just calling it pattern analysis and predictability, having that. And I'm not sure you could bottle it either. I don't know if we could bottle it, Dennis, and sell it. It's just who you are.
Yeah, and here's a real peculiar thing in my career in weather forecasting. My pattern recognition skills got better after I took 2 semesters of sign language.
Uh,
Wasn't just a coincidence because to be good at sign language, to even learn it and to survive a class in sign language, you have to be a very good visual, spotting the patterns kind of person. It makes your brain think in a different way. And I know from seeing a lot of school teachers now working with young kids,
mhm.
they're teaching them the basics of sign language. And it really is something that I think people have to utilize. But in all of my jobs that I've had of trying to forecast the future, it's always been about pattern recognition. In horse racing, it's trying to decipher from the data who you think is going out for the lead. Pace handicapping, which was very crucial in harness racing. It's very important in flats as well, in thoroughbreds. But in harness racing, it's incredibly important, especially at a half-mile track. And that's how my brain was trained, was to spot that data. Here's the intriguing thing of what we did with our 6 metrics last year. And this was a beta test, folks, but it was a beta test that worked quite well. But one of the things we did, Professor, we had no hierarchy of the data.
No.
We didn't say, look at MVP first and then look at Bush number and then look at this. We looked at all 6 independently.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't know which one was going to give us the better grade at any particular time in the draft. So it didn't matter whether it was, when we got down to only 3 metrics being in play, didn't matter whether it was Bush, MVP, upside value, Vegas props, did not matter which 3 of the 6. It was the fact that there were 3 of 6, which was better than 2 of 6. And that's how we strategized. Now, we weren't blind to opportunity either. When you got to a certain point when it was less than 4 metrics in the positive, we were looking especially at the upside. I cared more about that first group of data, that first 48 on your Bush number, than I cared about anything else. I wanted to see who had the best upside weeks in the past, or in the case of rookies, who were going to be flopped into a position of being able to do that. Now, I've noticed something very interesting in the past 2 weeks, going back in the data and trying to figure out why certain really good rookie players at wide receiver did not instantly become great in the NFL. If there are 2 wide receivers already on a team with better than 80 MVP indexes, it's not likely a rookie will succeed. We saw really good rookies in Jackson Smith Najigbo in Seattle a couple of years ago, and last year Rome Odunze. Neither one of them passed that test. So when I look at, and Malik Neighbors did with the Giants, he had no competition with the Giants. He didn't have a single guy over 80, and he only had one over 60. Yeah. So we knew the opportunity. Ladd McConkey.
So I think you're talking team. I would call it team structure.
Team structure. If you look at the team structure, and there are already 2 decent wide receivers on that team, they don't have to be top guys. But if there's 2 decent wide receivers, it's tough for the rookie to break through that first year. If they don't have 2, then I'm cool on the rookie. So, and same thing happened in Vegas. Vegas didn't have 2 wide receivers. Look at what Bowers was able to do.
Yes.
So that's going to be a strategy that we use a lot in the new year is, okay, if these guys have 2 guys over 60, 2 guys over 80, forget the rookie wide receiver, except in dynasty, because we see how the rosters change. But in a redraft, I'm not taking a rookie. I'm already very stingy on when I take rookie wide receivers in redraft. But now I've got an extra piece of evidence that tells me when to ignore them altogether on a team. And that's how you get better, is by tracking what happened, why it happened, and applying that logic to the next year. That's all part of pattern recognition as well.
Yeah. And by the way, I have done years of experience versus career arc for running backs. Maybe we can hit that next time around or whatever.
Yes.
But I've done that for the quarterbacks and the tight ends as well. So I have added that metric in there. I just hadn't. It's there. I'm gonna get around to it, but uh, here's something that just hit me by getting so into the data. We are away from what the public is thinking.
Yes.
So in other words, we come in at the last moment and take a look and see what's going on. I think in horse racing, what I do, I call it a look in. In other words, 15, 20 minutes into a big race, especially, just look at the odds, just kind of, okay, yeah, these are thought of well, these are not. And just kind of have that and then go back and get a little deeper into my metrics. It's kind of like a look in. And right now, I hadn't even thought about looking in. Best ball is the way I look in to kind of get a feel for where the bargains are going to be. And I think you and I, come June or so, when I start doing those $5, I think we'll have a lot more look in to the odds that people are thinking, and I think we're going to be able to spot some nice values again. It's not like this year we're not going to be able to spot. I'm pretty confident because of our methodology that we're going to have plenty of potential values that we're going to find, and our teams are going to be structured based on what we're thinking, not on what the public is thinking. I think people get scared because if you look at the fast drafts, usually you got a screen and you see the ones going away, and what you're looking at is the next five or six. And that
Yes.
seems to bias you in, whereas maybe the next player is 10 or 15 down that you should take. It's kind of like the Derrick Henry, you know, you need to be taking him later, but if you only look at the top five or six, you would miss him. It's kind of like blinders. In those fast drafts, do you have time to go 20 down just to make sure, is this the time to pick this bargain? I think you get nervous. Then you start saying, everybody says this is the next person, whatever it is. And you start getting this feeling that you don't know anything, and the public's smart. It's kind of like at the horse track. They say, man, this is a 1-5. And you're thinking, man, I'm a fool. I like this 8-1, but I can't beat the 1-5. It takes courage to bet against a 1-5 shot. And if you've done the horse racing long enough, you either don't bet the race or you double up on your 8-1 because you're going to get really paid if you're right. And I think having that experience has helped me in some of these decisions. That's why I do slow. I hate fast because I think you get biased and tricked because it gets scary. It's like, man, what do they? It's the, in quotes, what do they know? They're smarter than me. I'm a dummy here. I mean, you start playing against, and then all of a sudden, after it's done, the end of the year, damn man, I should have listened. I knew this was this. And you start blaming, then you get mad. And then all of a sudden next year it's back again and you're doing the same thing. It's like you're in this rut and you don't ever get out of it. Folks, you need to break the cycle. Quit worrying about what the ADP is telling you. Okay, it's a guide. It is not a you gotta. It's not in blood. ADP is not signed in blood. Okay. And you can look 10, 15 down, And so what if they're laughing? We got some Snickers, everybody was, these fools over here. Grandpa 1 and 2 over here trying to mess with us youngins. Shit.
And see, that's the key is you got to, but you learn this thing over a course of several seasons. So 4 years ago, I noticed a pattern because I always date a lot of my drafts. I put the date on the draft so I know how I'm doing. And so I do this random sample of free drafts every year at ESPN, and they're just all for fun. It's just practice. Okay. And I start them as early as they open. and I'll continue until I get into the meat and potatoes of my paid leagues. Once I enter the paid league arena, I don't worry about the freebies anymore. But what the freebies taught me 4 years ago is I was watching the improvement of my teams. So I'd start out doing okay, do better, better, better. And then I'd start falling off. And what it was is I was listening to the consensus. I was listening to the noise on Twitter telling me that this guy is better than that guy instead of letting my data and letting my opportunity way of looking at fantasy football guide me. So what happened from 4 years ago to the last 2 years, Professor, is once my knowledge base of who's going to be in contention as starters. Notice I say isn't a lock to start, is in a contention for that starting position. As that got better, my quality went up, plateaus in July and August, and stays solid right up to the start of the year. So what I've done over the last 4 years is stop listening to the noise. Stop believing in the noise. Stop looking at the tote board and seeing that 3-5 shot that you don't even have as a pick. You eliminated that horse. You didn't think much of him, and he's 3-5. And you're letting that get you. The other day at Penn National, I just flip on the horse racing every once in a while. I don't even have a form. I'm just looking at past performances off of Equibase. What has the horse done over the last 3 or 4 starts? And I noticed a horse at Penn National, cheap claiming race. So wasn't going to be a Holden to form race. Saw a horse shipping in from Aqueduct. Been running on the New York circuit. Now he's at Penn National. Why? Because he couldn't hack it in New York. He's coming down a bunch of spots. And he ran okay. He ran third, fourth at Aqueduct in higher class races. Now he's shipping in. There was a 3-5 and a 6-5 on the board, and then he was at 5-1. Everybody else was a long shot, cheap claiming race. I looked at that. My dad was screaming at me to play that horse from the grave. Hey, Aqueduct shipper. That was one of his favorite angles. Beat the favorite with a shipper. Notice I didn't say play the favorite who's a shipper. Beat the favorite with a shipper.
Yep.
That horse went out to the lead and ran like a champion and won by 4 lengths. The 3-5 who hadn't started in a year, he was up the track. And the 6-5 caught third place. But it's just, you have these patterns. You will recognize them. And in fantasy football, we'll recognize patterns. Don't let the consensus scream and get you off of the guys that you know. And our beta test last year, Professor, on those 6 metrics was so good that we'll go back to that again and again and again. That's going to be our bread and butter because it was very successful last year. I know, I started my first best ball draft just for fun the other day.
Dennis, you're crazy.
So on Underdog, I just wanted to see for $3. I wanted to see who people were, are they getting excited about the rookies? Yes, Ashton Giente went like RB6.
Wow.
It's insane before you even know where he landed. But after 4 rounds or 5, 4 rounds now, 4 picks, I was picking from the 12th position.
Huh.
So my team so far, you score 3 wide receivers every week, 1 quarterback, Malik Neighbors, A.J. Brown, Mike Evans. My first 3 picks. I feel pretty good about that start.
Yeah, that's a pretty good pick.
And Josh Allen. So I grabbed a premium quarterback because I didn't like any of the options at running back, and Trey McBride and Brock Bowers were gone.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll wait another round. I'll probably get either Kittle at tight end or maybe go with Andrews next
Mm-hmm.
time around, depending on who's available.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm
Just
feeling
best
pretty good.
ball, best
Best
ball.
ball. Best ball. So I've got three really good wide receivers to start. And you score three every week. So that's a big key too. If you score three wide receivers every week
Yeah.
in your best ball, and you can have three WR1 types, because all three of those guys should finish in the top 15 this year by
Yep.
any metric.
Yep.
I like my chances of competing in that league instantly, and I'll patch and fill at running back.
Right.
But it's amazing to me how early some of the rookies go
Yeah.
in best ball early in the season.
Something else.
So head on over to the Science of
Yeah.
Fantasy Football, folks. Check out all of the data.
That awkward silence, Dennis. I was,
Yeah.
you called me. I was just looking at the FFPC and I was just, and all of a sudden I was like, $2,000. And I was like, wow, I would, I guess they have the main event or something for $2,000.
Woo.
Wow. That's, let me ask you this. Do you think everybody in those 2000 are that much better than me that plays $30 at the top?
No, I don't.
Whew,
I
I
don't.
think there's got to be some loose money in there somewhere.
There's got to be some loose money, but
Yeah.
it's also the kind of thing where if you've got 2,000 to spend and you are smarter than the consensus,
Yeah. Excellent.
I'd be spreading that money around.
I would. I wouldn't play one shot at it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
But it is intriguing to think, what would it be like
yeah, to
to
play
jump in there?
2000.
But some of these big prize games, especially in best ball,
Yeah.
I think they're about the same odds as hitting the lotto.
The
I really
lottery.
do.
The lottery.
The
Yeah.
lottery.
Yeah.
But head on over to the
Okay.
Science of Fantasy Football. Check out all the data. Check out all of the lesson plans of the professor. I'm telling you, folks, you can learn a lot. Read up on my MVP index. You heard us talk about it a lot here. You'll understand what it's about. It's about scoring the three things that can happen in fantasy football. And as you said, as I said earlier in the show, I'm going to have another little study to do, thanks to the professor pointing out the math of how his Bush number works.
Mhm.
And then head on back here next week for another edition of the Science of Fantasy Football.
Get to work, folks. Woo woo.
That was good stuff.
That was good.
I love that Bush number. I told you last year when you started playing with that I thought that had the potential of being one of the strongest things that we have ever done. And it's not disappointing, man. I'm telling you, it is. That data is really
I'm
keen.
gonna look at the last, 2021, two. I'm gonna try to go a few years back, so we'll have a report on that. But I said now, Dennis, I got to go and do the quarterbacks and the tight ends because I'm not convinced that everything is that cherry and good.
Good thing you're not working full time anymore. We're keeping you
Not
too
working at
busy.
all. Yeah, I'm playing with the dogs and whatnot, and yeah, we've I will be going down Louisiana next Friday, so I'm thinking either wait till like next Monday week or Thursday evening
Yeah, we could
for
do Thursday.
you think?
We could do Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah, that works good for me because I've got got my granddaughter coming over next
Oh,
weekend, Friday night into
how was
Saturday.
your you had your grandson there last
Oh
time.
yeah, wore
Well,
my ass out. I was
did
glad
he?
to get to the week. Yeah, no,
Does
he's
he love your Ashton, the dog?
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
They're two.
yeah,
They're like she just absolutely adores that kid. So
yeah.
yeah, they
Throw them
were.
outside. They're play. Does she fetch sticks or?
She will fetch ball. She'll play ball.
Yeah,
But
good.
she is a husky, so it's like 3 or 4 times running, and then she says, "That's enough. I've had enough. Just
Yeah,
love on me some more." But no, we had a good time.
good.
He's a real creative minded kid too.
Hmm.
So Stace was doing crafts with him and doing some painting and stuff.
Hmm.
So that gave me a little break from
Yeah.
from doing stuff so I could play with the numbers. But no, it was a good time. He's a great kid.
Now,
Yeah,
Dennis, I got an idea for you. This is stuff that little kids can do. It's a simple experiment. It's
ooh.
called an egg drop. And so
Oh,
what you do is you let the kid design a vehicle that when you drop it, make sure you got a distance that it will not crack. So you could let them develop any method, tie sticks together, put it in styrofoam, do tissue. In other words, make some vehicle, with popsicle sticks, maybe go
yep.
Hobby Lobby and get some different, you know, cotton balls, let them see, I mean, of course, eggs, it's a little expensive these days, but in the old days, but, kids like that, and you let them do the experiment and you
So,
record it in their
yep,
data log.
yep, yep.
And, that's get them because, when they have the science fairs coming, later in their schooling, that's kind of what
Yes.
you can do is you have experiments and changing variables and start introducing them to the scientific method. But it's called egg drop and it's pretty simple, but it's fun and it's messy, so kids love that,
Yep, yep.
especially if you say, ooh, that's a mess, and it's kind of like they're being bad but they're not. They kind of like that, a little bit mischievous.
So I had a physics teacher in high school
Yeah.
that had us do that. But
Oh,
here's the rub on, because it was high school.
yeah.
Um, so we actually had to test the materials and to predict how successful
Ah,
different methods would be. So we were given like 5 different potential methods. We had to calculate doing other experiments. We had to calculate
nice.
the likelihood of an egg surviving. So we had to come up with you know, uh, we had to base it off of our experiments. And, was bubble wrap better than tissue paper? Was it, but whatever. We had to actually do studies of the material. We had to do scientific experiments to determine which was better. And then got to do the drops and to figure
Nice.
out which one we got to pick our best method of that passed the test, and that's the one
Yeah,
whichever
you
one
can
you
do
thought.
airplanes, paper
Yep,
airplanes. You could
yep,
fold them in different ways or
yep,
different types of paper.
yep. Oh yeah,
Anyway, those are good stuff. That's what Grandpa needs to do is make him a
yeah,
little scientist here.
yeah. There definitely needs to be more of that stuff done now as they get older, because
Because
they
I don't know what they're doing in schools these days.
no, I
I
want
don't
them to get
know.
hooked on science. It's funny. I at at
I'm gonna stop
his
recording. I think we're out of the
yeah,
fantasy. Yeah.
we're out of the realm. But
Anyway,
no,
everybody,
his
I hope you enjoyed it. Bye.